Hello and welcome to the Dripping Hartnell podcast. This week we watched, because we're going to be doing it a little bit different from now on, we're going to try a different format to see if it works any better. So this week we watched episode 2 of Keys of Marinus, and that episode is called The Velvet Web. I'm here with the normal gang of Jimmy Pie.
Hello.
AI Dan. And Connor Chadwick.
Hello.
So we just finished watching the episode, so we just talk our way through it and share our thoughts and feelings.
I mean, I'm going to start off by saying, because it's been a while since I've watched that one, and I liked it. It's a very weird episode, isn't it? It's sort of everything. Not a lot seems to happen, but a lot happens.
I said this when we were watching it, but this is, out of the whole of the Keys of Marinus one, this is the one that stands out for me. But I think it's because it's quite a simple idea.
Simple premise.
Yeah.
It fits nicely into children's programming for a 20-minute program.
That's true.
And you watch it and you go, group of people under a misconception, find out that only one of them notices it, the others don't believe.
It's not overly complicated, but it's enough to keep an audience interested.
But it's also that sort of simplicity enough where you don't have everyone sit down and go, "Oh, that person just does it," and they go, "Right, okay, let's get out of here then."
And you
no acknowledgement.
You didn't need a big set and a huge amount of stuff to really make the story work. It's a very tightly knit, well done story in a small setting, where I think it's one of those few. I mean, I say few, I was probably going to be more of them, but I would say off the top of my head, it's one of those few Doctor Who episodes where you're actually paying more attention to the narrative than you are its setting, because its setting is so that there isn't a setting
to its advantage.
That's what I mean. There isn't a setting, but it uses that to its advantage by not saying, "Look, you need to look at all of this on screen."
But I will say this: the set for this, the way they thought about the camera trickery, is really good. It's a really good concept, because that was all one set. It's just depended on what side you were shooting from.
Yeah, shooting it as POV as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was like that nice moment when you're looking at Barbara's POV of what it really looks like, and when you're looking at it, you know, when she knocks over that mug, which is meant to be a glass or something, and he says, "Now look, you've broken it," and he picks it up, and the mug is still okay. It's fine.
Well, it's like we were saying.
It's the unsettled.
Yeah, but it's like we were saying, because we were pointing out the fact that when you were looking from Barbara's POV out at the people, obviously they were all in tattered clothing and stuff. But then when you were looking from them, obviously when we were seeing Barbara's stuff, she still looked fine. I just love that idea.
It's a really simple idea, and it plays up to the audience strengths.
That's why I like watching classic Who and anything from this era, because it's the experimentation era. It's where you can see, I see they still do that now.
Because I wouldn't have thought like POV of a person was done very often on telly back then. Not too often.
No, I suppose it was,
films, wasn't it?
It was great. It was interesting with the bit where, what would you call it, where like you could see the set design as well, like how they kind of, you know, this, what would you call it, with the kind of brain things. Like I was kind of like, this is a very.
It was just a dark room, but it was a dark room with
a single door, because you don't need too much in it. Again, you want to draw the focus on them. You don't want to distract the audience with everything. But it's also, you look at that and you think, this is an episode where you can tell this was one of those episodes where, production-wise, you get the feeling they went, right, we're on a really
We
tight
have
budget
no
here.
money.
We have no money. But you look at it and think like, yep, you know what, though? With what you did, it's fantastic. And I think it really shows to a point, even at a TV level, okay, this is going back to the 1964, but even at a TV level, it's amazing what you can do with so little money when you shoot it the right way.
Mm.
And it's like when you mentioned it, Abby, when Ian and the Doctor go into that room, and it's literally just 3 walls.
It's literally
and
just
a
a
mug.
close shot. Yeah.
And it's a really tight shot.
Tight shot, a mug and a plain room.
And it's just, it works so well because, again, you're concentrating on their performance because you're finally seeing how things are, but they're there really looking at things going, oh, look at this, it's fantastic. And you can see in their performance that they're not seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And it really does play to the strengths of it, that they've really just sort of put so much in it. And again, I think that's what grips the story.
But I think another thing about this episode is the fact that the Doctor's in the trap.
Yes.
You know, the Doctor is also seeing that rusty cup as a magnificent vase, and it's not very often you see that when the Doctor's kind of under the hypnosis and it's having to be the companion, the female companion as well,
of course,
it's having to be like something's not right, you know.
Also, I don't know if this is, I don't think we've noted this yet. I just had a quick watch back of it because when Doctor, Ian and Susan walk in, you have the flashing light as they are blinded. I just looked, and the studio lights, when they walk in and they start the doors open, they aren't on. And as they walk in and the lights are flashing, they turn up the light. So it looks like the image is creating itself around them.
Oh.
I've just looked at that now. Basically, that whenever that flashing light was happening, that was
old school trickery.
That was basically the flashing light, which happens to Barbara, which breaks the spell. It's basically the spell being put onto them immediately. So I was just watching it now going, yeah, they've turned up the lights as they've been walking in. The lights are getting brighter because they're falling into the trap, and the more they walk in. Yeah,
and they've literally just used the studio lights to do that.
It's just, I like that.
Practical.
It's why this era of Doctor Who is my favourite. It's just because those little things, and then you find them as little gems.
Yeah, because nowadays they just do it with SFX, even if it was just a light, whereas they have to do it more in a practical kind of thing. I'll say this, the music, when they first walk in and see Barbara, the first thing they do is like, oh no, there's blood on this dial. And I love the fact they covered their backs for that. It's like, oh yeah, I just scratched my arm. It's like, okay. It's purely because you needed that cliffhanger at the end of the last episode. It's like, there's blood. Oh, she's okay.
Yeah. And it's
like...
it was kind of like, it was kind of funny, like how they kind of come in and they're like, oh no, it's there. And then again, it's like, oh, hi guys. And they're like,
I say, but the music for that opening scene, not much of the other music kind of stands out to me, but that one bit, and it's like, you know, and it's like the harmony music. They're all kind of like, oh, this place is lush. Look at the harps playing. I love that. But then we all got distracted by Hartnell's pointy wig.
I will say this though. Actually, thinking about it, you know how we were saying about just now. You were saying about the cliffhanger being kind of just there for a cliffhanger. I mean, so I thought this when I first watched this, which is, what if she was dragged in?
Yeah. And then the illusions kind of made her think that she's just cut her wrist or something.
Because of like the blissful unawareness and not wanting to be.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like she could have actually, it could have been taken off of her by force. How
taken off and left to deliberately
considering that
attract the others.
They've been drinking posh wines, and I imagine then it might have just been like dirty water for all we know.
Cholera.
But that's the thing. But like, you're thinking like she might have actually been hurt, but she's making
unaware.
it feel like a small scratch. It's up for interpretation. My interpretation is that she's probably been grabbed and dragged in because
I like that.
It would make more sense. It would make more sense from a continuity perspective
because she's already there and comfortable.
So she's been under that illusion for a while,
and seems to be comfortable with the staff. I don't think it was.
And she knows, and she's already aware of. She's already introduced herself to them. She knows who they are, what they do. So she's clearly been there a while.
So we mentioned the Hartnell wig for this episode. I'd love to know what's going on with that wig for this episode. I really hope they fix it by the next one because it was really distracting to me.
He was just really, really surprised.
All the way through. He was so
yeah.
surprised his wig slipped back on his head. I reckon that they had to get a standing wig girl for that day. Like something's not right.
I kind of, the way I looked at it, I was kind of thinking to myself, wait a minute, because during most of the episode, Hartnell and Caroline Ford just disappear for a bit, and I'm like, was this one of those times where Hartnell just was like
not in action? Yeah.
Well, you got to think about it as well. The first Doctor, especially at this early stage, this being the fifth ever story, he's still in this very stubborn era.
Yes.
Like, they're still, Barbara and Ian are still going on about take us home and all this sort of stuff. Like, it's still very early days for them. So he's probably just like, well, I mean, you could see from his reaction to Barbara that he was already not accepting of anything she said and stop.
Yeah, you're a silly woman, sort of thing.
Stop being a brat. Stop being ungrateful. The only person she knows that she can lean on to trust is Ian, and then when Ian gets turned, that's when it's like
she's got nobody to.
And that was a really well done moment where it's literally. The thing is, if it was done in a new series, they would make that a huge thing. But I think that's what makes it so good is for the fact that you've got such limited time, just the chemistry between them there is it's kind of like, oh, this is her one hope. Something's fine.
Her heart was shattered then, wasn't it?
It's the fact that it's just in the middle of a hug. She's not even looking at him. She can tell. She knows at that point something's wrong. And it's just... He didn't
hug her back.
No, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. She just immediately knows. And it's just... Again, really simple moment, quick moment. It's done so well because it really does realize you realize, okay, she's on her own.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the costumes here?
Yeah.
Yes.
You were saying like this is quite like a nice nod to future stuff with like the Romans and things. And the one thing that the BBC have always been good at, and I know this isn't technically a period thing, but it is in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the illusion of it, yeah.
Yeah, the illusion is kind of like of classic Roman stuff.
Decadence, an illusion of decadence.
Yeah. And I love what they've put Barbara in for this episode. All the women are dressed really nice. The dude, however, I question that outfit.
Yes. Yes. It's quite short, shall we say?
Especially as throughout the whole of the first scene, considering Susan's supposed to be what, 15?
Something like that.
Yeah, she's in eye level with this dude's crotch, and I'm like, this is an interesting situation.
I looking at the dress that Barbara was wearing in that scene, just go off on a tangent. I'm wondering if that was reused later for somebody like Katrina, because it looks very similar to that same sort of thing. I was
about to say Katrina. It looks kind of like, or the similar sort of thing that Vicky wore in Romans. Knowing the BBC, it probably was.
It probably was, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then once again you got to think of the change in kind of POV when all the costumes changed to the tattered versions. Like even the girl when she gets kicked out, the one that has the key round her neck, she's got a load of slits in her dress as well, and like, it's just so well done. It is really well done.
It's a classic thing of simple ideas often work the best. You don't need to overcomplicate things.
My question here is, what's with the glowing eyes?
That was the illusion being projected.
Then what was the light?
All the two eyes of the brains.
I was going to say, what if that was the illusion being projected? What were the eyes? What was the lights then? Was that just the initial hypnotizing bit? I'm guessing.
I think it's
either that or the eyes are just surveillance.
Could be. It's how the brains. Well, I mean, it's how they probably knew what was going on. And I know we talked about this just before we started recording, but and this is up to people's headcanon about who those villains were. So they're disembodied brains with stalks coming out of the brains.
That I thought were slugs.
Yeah. They're not slugs, they're disembodied.
I honestly thought they were slugs.
It did look like slugs, but yeah.
They're very reminiscent of the Harmony Shoal who appear in 2 stories back to back, I think. Of
Doctor Mysterio and
Husbands of River Song.
Husbands of River Song
cameo. But they aren't actually seen as their brain form until Return of Doctor Mysterio. And there was and in that Doctor I don't know, they didn't have Confidential anymore, but they had, like, the little behind the scenes segment.
Yeah,
probably on the DVD.
Yeah, Stephen Moffat said that he liked them so much in the Keys of Marinus serial, and he didn't say it, like, he said he liked them so much. So I'm assuming he means that he's brought them back and modernized them, because in this story, these creatures were having to use their brain power to control the minds of others, which is kind of the story of what the Keys of Marinus can do anyway.
It makes a lot of sense. It really does make a lot of sense, But
Whereas,
boys and girls, we have no evidence of this, so if you find it, please let us know, and we shall update the TARDIS wiki to say that this is the case. We shall make this headcanon.
Exactly. And then it would make sense anyway for their history to have them start off like this and then grow into the Empire, where they're still, because they are brains in jars in Return of Doctor Mysterio. They've just not got the stalks. Their eyes have retreated, and we know why. It's because Barbara hit one of them in the eye. They're like,
this is a weakness.
We have found a weakness.
They just done it so I didn't keep thinking that they were slugs.
Yeah, probably. No, I always thought they were slugs. I never clocked onto them being brains, really.
I know. For me, that works as a headcanon, having them go from controlling the minds of others to going and becoming the minds of others.
I say this, and this is the one thing that Jimmy pointed out. One thing that Jimmy pointed out was the fact that the brains were pulsing.
Oh, I find that quite gross, but yeah.
But you know that there's some random dude under that blacked out table just like squeezing the little a little pump to like when they were doing Brain of Morbius and they were having to make the brain pump. It's the same kind of thing, but
just some little studio urchin with a bicycle pump under the set.
They're sticking under the set. Sticking like, pump your brains. Anything to add, AI Dan?
Well, I mean, like, I would say, like, for like only part, like for episode 2, like it was definitely like something that, like, I'm thinking obviously as this is a 6-episode story, I'm kind of like, it's good that they're trying to at least like try and keep the momentum going from the first story, because they're like, look, this is obviously they're collecting these pieces. We have to try and make sure at least all of the stories are interesting enough to maintain engagement. And I mean, for here, I mean, definitely. I mean, the kind of like the whole thing with control and all this stuff, it kind of links in a little bit with the Vord and what they're kind of doing themselves. So it's gonna, there is that little bit of connection that we're kind of starting to see.
So, anything to add before we start talking about the next episode?
I mean, the only thing that sort of came to me is I was looking at thinking, right at the very end of the episode, they talk about this, the city has begun to riot. And it's like, they were in a city this whole time. That's really not mentioned or given the impression throughout the rest of the episode. They sort of say, oh yeah, this city's rioting off screen. You're like, you were in a city?
It was like when Barbara ran out, that corridor that had no one in it, that was the city.
That was literally just seemed like, yeah. But I was rewatching that. I would just thought they're in just a generic building somewhere. It never dawned on me that they were in some sort of city. If they'd had some sort of background shot of this cityscape as part of the illusion, that would have been all you'd need. It was just odd that they just make this thing. Yes, people are rioting. So there's more people than what we've got here.
Anything to add, Connor?
No.
No. So stay tuned. After the twiddly bit in the middle here, we will start talking about episode 3, The Screaming Jungle. Hello and welcome back. Now we are going to talk about episode 3 of Keys and Marinus, The Screaming Jungle. So this episode was basically Barbara and Ian showing us how amazing they are.
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's it. That's the end of the.
It's another good.
You're muted, Connor.
Hartnell was on a well-deserved holiday.
Yes, we should make note of that. Actually, it's this episode and episode 4 of Keys. William Hartnell was on a well-deserved break, which is why he's not in it. But again, it's a nice, good, self-enclosed story, and I have to say, I'm kind of glad that it's just Ian and Barbara, because when you look at the size that the sets that they're working on, the size of it, if you'd had the other 3 in there for most of it, it really would have been too crowded. You didn't need that many people to do that story.
The set looked crowded in the opening scenes, you know, when they were actually in the jungle and they're all kind of in the back of shot looking at trees and stuff. Even those shots look packed.
It really, like, when I was seeing it, I was kind of thinking, okay, they're going to get, at the end of episode 2, thinking, okay, they got this big group now. They're going to all go off together trying to solve this thing. And then immediately it's like, yeah, we wrote the next episode, and then we realized how much budget we have, so we just gonna have to shoehorn in something here.
Yeah.
So somebody just went to Terry and just went, yeah, Terry, we can't do that. We can't do what you want there, man.
I kind of got the feeling as well, set-wise, it feels like it was almost like one continuous set. You had a bit of jungle, which leads into the doors, which leads into the room with the net, which leads into the house. And it's sort of like, it feels like it was just built on a sort of curve. And they just went from left. They just went from left to right. But it works. And again, like we've just said with episode 2, it works because it plays to its minimalism.
I think the only part of the set in this episode I'd question is the spikes.
Oh yeah, I was just looking at that like, this is Panto.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say I would question the spikes, and I would also question the hands.
That was purely down to budget and
that was absolutely down to budget. Yes.
Like I say, but the one thing you pointed out when we were watching it was like, maybe if the sleeves on the arms had been tighter, so there wasn't like a dirty great big gap, it wouldn't have been as obvious. And then there's that weird bit. There's a weird bit when the hands reappear and it does this sort of hello, just sort of jazz hands. Jazz hands. It's really weird for no apparent reason. Suddenly has gone. Ta-da! These are meant to be stone hands which just flex inwards and they don't move, and they flex outwards and they don't move. But when they reappear, suddenly, articulated fingers. Twiddly fingers. The one thing I did notice was I love the fact that when Barbara disappears, nobody else seems bothered but Ian.
Ian's like, where's she gone? And everyone else is like,
she'll be alright.
We've got the key. Who cares?
Literally, that was the kind of feeling I was getting from the rest of the team. It's like, oh, she'll catch up. You're not worried about the fact she's just got stone, like. But it annoyed me that even Susan didn't care. Yeah. That's the weird thing. Even Susan wasn't concerned about Barbara. You think she would have been? Yeah, definitely.
You could. I mean, there's some times where you could say, like, maybe it's I guess part of the Time Lord and Susan. That's where, like, that I'll just assume they're all right, and that's. Yeah, I suppose so. And then Ian's like, I kind of like the fact that Ian is both the skeptic and the one actually getting stuff done.
Yeah. Yes. He's definitely the doer in this episode. 100%. Yes. But I will say this, out of the 2 episodes, the other one I preferred. That's just my personal opinion.
No, I get what you mean. I think it's genuinely because the Doctor wasn't in this one.
Maybe, yeah.
We've had Doctor Light episodes, obviously, in the new series. It wasn't a thing in the classic series. And again, as we said, Hartnell is definitely well deserving of his break and things like that. But I think it's just, you do sort of, I mean, you had the entire team there at the very beginning except the Doctor, and you kind of think, well, where's he gone? Yeah, I know they mentioned it previously.
I bet he just appears in episode 5 like, hello, I'm back. I've not been anywhere, honestly. I was over the other side of that jungle.
They mentioned it previously, but it just feels like Yeah, it's a bit odd that everyone else is there, but he's not.
Mm. Oh.
But we were talking about how nobody ever questioned, like in the 60s, the fact that they went to all these alien planets and nobody ever thought, why do they speak the same language? Because we ended up looking it up, didn't we?
Yes.
About the my brain stopped working.
Translation circuit.
Yeah, translation circuit. So what was it that you found, Jimmy?
So it was first mentioned in a 1967 book, I think possibly the annual of 1967, in a story, that it was basically some kind of mental thing that the TARDIS can do. But it wasn't actually mentioned on the TV series until The Mask of Mandragora, which is obviously a Fourth Doctor story. So there's quite a significant gap. You think about that, that's 3 Doctors worth, when nobody really questioned why they could understand this kind of stuff. And you would have said, okay, fair enough, First Doctor, they're starting out, they didn't really know that. Second Doctor, again, you know, it's probably didn't think of it. But I'm really surprised, genuinely surprised, it didn't get mentioned during the Third Doctor era. When you consider that he was the tinkerer, that he was the one that explained all the science, he was the science guy. You really think that he would have explained it to them? It's just very odd that they didn't put it in there until then.
It's kind of, you could say that, like, in the beginning, like, a lot of the things that we do come to know about Doctor Who, even by at least the Fourth Doctor era, like, obviously, like, you know, regeneration, translation circuits, you know,
or even the concept of TARDIS. You got to think how we've changed our POV of TARDIS, because obviously in that first episode, Susan declares that she named it herself. It's like, no, you fucking didn't, love. Get back in your box.
The thing is, as well, wasn't, just to go off on a slight tangent, wasn't Gallifrey, I know, because obviously the Time Lords are mentioned in War Games, obviously, most notably, but wasn't Gallifrey wasn't named until the Third Doctor era, I seem to remember.
Yeah.
Connor,
you
I feel like you would know that one.
Well, when Gallifrey was named,
was it third? It was Third Doctor era, wasn't it?
Third Doctor, I believe it was the first Sontaran story.
Oh yes, that rings a bell.
Because that's when he also names himself a Time
Lord. Because two just says my people.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, he doesn't even.
Yeah, because he also names himself. It's when he goes, I am a Time Lord, and then that's when the Sontarans know of them. So why
have I got a memory of the Second Doctor talking about the? Oh, I'm thinking of the 3 Doctors. Because I can hear in my head. I'm hearing the Second Doctor go, I'm not just the Time Lord, we're the same time. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, but that was
obviously after. Yeah, that was 3 Doctors.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you want to mention about the Screaming Jungle? I felt like it felt a lot shorter.
It did.
It didn't quite, to me. It doesn't quite live up to episode 2 that we just discussed. Episode 2 had a lot more interesting ideas that were put together more interestingly and uniquely, whereas the Screaming Jungle, maybe I'm being a bit flippant when I say this, it only screamed at the beginning.
That's true. False advertisement.
And it wasn't quite to do with the jungle more than it was to do with like the preying on, you know, kind of instinctual fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was called the talking jungle or the whispering jungle, because ultimately they used the whispers to solve it.
Yeah,
not the screams. So if it had been called something like that, the whispering jungle, obviously it would have been contradictory with its cliffhanger where it's screaming, but you know.
Also, the fact that it like really affects Susan and then she's not in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's the whole premise of, because some of us have had to write like 4-parters, 2-parters, whatever, where you have to have that cliffhanger, and you do get to the point where you're like, you have to make it more dramatic than it necessarily needs to be. It's a bit like, you know, we were talking about Hell's Kitchen a couple of weeks ago, and how for like in the next episode, and they make it all dramatic, and there's ambulances, and it turns out the guy cut his finger. It's very much the same kind of premise, you know. Yeah. So I think overall, I think we all agree that episode 2 is better than 3. It's good as a overall story arc. There's one thing we were saying was the fact that we like the fact that every single one of these stories is kind of an individual adventure.
But notice how it still falls back into the theme of mind control.
That's true.
That's true.
Because remember, when all the keys are assembled, you can control the minds of every being in the universe. It's still about the mind being controlled at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's true.
So I'm going to... Sorry.
Go on, darling.
No, I was just going to say... Right, you go.
Right, I was going to say, I love how... Because escape rooms obviously weren't a thing back then, but it did feel kind of like a Crystal Maze type escape room type of thing going on with Ian and Barbara, you know? It's like you have to find the clues, and you have to like find the key, and then you have to like get into the safe, and it is very much a escape the room type scenario.
Very much.
Go on, Jimmy.
No, I was just going to mention this because if I don't, we'll get letters. The Time Lords are very much mentioned in the War Games, and the Doctor is identified as a Time Lord.
Well, there we go. We stand
Yes,
corrected.
of course. Second Doctor just say in slow motion, the
Time Lords. And then there's a bit, so it's literally here. There's a scene where it says the War Chief. We are both Time Lords. We both decided to leave our race. When he's talking to the Doctor, so he is mentioned.
I think it's because in that particular scene, the Third Doctor says it in such a definitive way that it's always recognised as the first time.
Very much so, yeah. So don't send us letters if you've gotten to that point in the podcast and you're already angrily typing in the comments.
Retract.
Listen to the rest of it. retract your scurrilous comments.
Retract your statements. Do it.
So yes. There we go. That was us watching episodes 2 and 3 of Keys to Marinus.
Fun times.
This is episode 3 for us. This is where it gets confusing. So this is episode 3 for us, and in episode 4 of the Dripping Hartnell podcast, we will be
I think I know
watching the 11th hour, which we all know is Connor's favorite episode. So look forward to that. Goodbye.
Bye bye.